So we've got a pop quiz time of our young people here. I want to ask a question. What was the theme of the reading that Deacon Chuck just read for us? What was the theme of our reading?
To always give people a second chance.
To give people a second chance. Is there a word for that? Is there a word for that when we do that?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. You're absolutely right. What was your name again? What's your name? Aaron. Aaron? Aaron. Well, Aaron, thank you. You were listening very well because Jesus talked to us today about forgiveness. And as Aaron says, sometimes forgiveness is giving someone a second chance, isn't it? So who has an example of a time when you needed to extend some forgiveness? Does somebody have an example of what that looked like? I see Mr. Sidney nodding. Can you tell us a brief example? Can you share? You did. What did you have to? When did you have to extend forgiveness?
When I was in the military, I had an incident happen with one of my lower officers, and I had to be military voiced, and I said some things that I should not say, and then I called him back into my office after everything had settled down, and I apologized for him. I had to extend myself and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that," but.
Okay.
And that was it.
So you behaved a certain way, and then you regretted it, and when you regretted it, you went and acknowledged that to the person that you offended, and that person extended forgiveness to you. Is that right? Okay. Well, that's a good example of what we're talking about. And there are a number of reasons why we might want to be forgiving, right? Why we might need to seek forgiveness. Because I think, like in the case that we just heard about, sometimes we do things that hurt other people's feelings, don't we? How many of us have had our feelings hurt before? I'm expecting to see every hand in this room because we all kind of know what that means, don't we? When somebody hurts our feelings, we know what that kind of means. And it's a little different than when we feel sad because maybe someone in our life moves away, right? If we had a friend who moves away to a different place and it kind of hurts, but it's not really the same as if somebody hurts our feelings, is it? It's a little different, isn't it? They both hurt, by the way. Did you know that the reason we use the word hurt is because our brains actually hurt? It's the same chemical reaction in our brains when somebody hurts our feelings or when we're suffering grief. It's the same kind of chemical reaction that happens when we are physically hurt. Did you know that? Did you know that? Well, sometimes when someone hurts our feelings, that's when they might seek forgiveness. They might say, you know what? I'm sorry that I did that, and will you please forgive me? Now, Jesus tells us in today's gospel that we forgive a whole lot of times. Right? So Peter thinks he's being kind of smart. And he says, well, Jesus, do you think I should forgive how many times? How many times did Peter suggest? 7. 7 times. He says, is 7 enough? Now, why would Peter say 7? Why would he start with that number? Anybody have any ideas why would he start with that number? Why would he say 7?
It's his lucky number.
It's his lucky number. Well, it could be. It could be his lucky number. But Peter, in addition to being his lucky number, it probably was because in the days of Jesus' time, the expectation was that you forgive somebody 3 times. So Peter's being kind of crafty, and he's saying, well, how about if I do double that and even more than double that? Am I okay then, Jesus? And Jesus says, no, that's not enough. How many times does Jesus say we're supposed to forgive? 7 times, 70 times. Now, who are my mathematicians here? Who are my mathematicians? Do we have any mathematicians? 490 times. That's an awfully specific number of times, isn't it? Well, why do we have such a specific number of times? Because that number is so big. That number is so big that Jesus just kind of used it to stand in for infinity. Right? He was basically saying that we forgive over and over and over again. Basically, forgiveness is a process. It takes time. Okay? Now, why do we want to forgive? What's a reason that we might want to forgive? Does anybody have an idea of why it's a good idea to forgive? It obviously must be, because Jesus talked about it a lot. So why is it so important to forgive? What do you think? Any ideas why it's important to forgive? What do you think? What do you think?
It might be a better person after you forgive.
So you're saying that if you forgive me, then it shows that you're a healthy person, right? It's a good thing to do. Okay, well that's certainly a good reason. That's certainly a good reason. How about does it help mend our relationships with each other? Because if I hurt your feelings, that might damage our relationship. Is that true? And maybe if I hurt your feelings, I should probably tell you I'm sorry, shouldn't I? Yeah, that would be good. And if I say I'm sorry, then you have, now it's your opportunity to say, okay, then Father Tim, I forgive you, right? But what if I don't say I'm sorry? What happens then? What do we do? I saw your hand. Do you have a suggestion? What do you do? If I hurt your feelings and I don't tell you I'm sorry, then what are you supposed to do? I'm stumping you. What did Jesus say in the gospel? He said to forgive, didn't he? Okay, but why would you forgive me if I'm not sorry? Why would you forgive me if I'm not sorry? What's in it for me? What do you think? Why would you forgive me if I'm not sorry?
Because it's still a good thing to do.
It's still a good thing to do. And why is it a good thing to do?
Because Jesus wants you to be kind to all people around you.
Okay, so you're right. It is kind. It is kind, right? And you might say, well, Father Tim, what if you don't deserve for me to be kind? And I'll tell you a little secret. Sometimes when we are holding on to those hurt feelings, it hurts us more to hold on to those hurt feelings. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever experienced that when you're holding on to those hurt feelings and it just won't go away? Right? And so when we forgive, sometimes we do it because we want to mend our relationship with the other person. But sometimes we forgive because it helps us to let go of that negativity that we're carrying around. Just like hurt is an actual feeling, right? Sometimes that holding on to that animosity is a real feeling. For me, I feel it in my chest. I don't know where you feel it. Maybe you feel it somewhere else, but I usually feel it right in your tummy. You feel it in your tummy. I feel it right here. We can all feel it in a little different place, but it is a physical response. And if we forgive, then sometimes we can let go of that feeling a little bit. Now, if you're anything like me, then there's a good chance that maybe you thought you were done dealing with an emotional problem, and then you wake up a few days later, and there's that problem again popping up. Have you ever had that happen? Have you ever had that happen where you thought, oh, it's no big deal, and then the next thing you know, it kind of is a big deal? Right? Maybe the earlier example of our friend moving away, right? Maybe we weren't crying anymore because we didn't miss that person. And then a few weeks later, we realize, I really miss my friend who moved away, right? So sometimes the same thing can happen with hurt feelings. Sometimes we realize that I thought I was over it, but guess what? I'm not. Well, that's where this 70 times 7 times comes into play, is that it's a process. Forgiveness is a process. And Jesus gives us such a high number because we're supposed to keep working at it. We're supposed to keep working at it. And if something is still bothering us, even if we thought we've had it resolved, and it comes up that maybe we don't have it resolved, well, then guess what? We get to try again. We get to try again because it doesn't do us any good to hold on to those grudges, right, that aren't helping us to improve our lives. Okay, so when we forgive, and you all were very bright and helpful today, okay, when we forgive, it helps us to, first of all, to be kind to others, but second of all, to be kind to ourselves. Because Jesus says that we want to love one another as we love ourselves, right? Well, that means we have to love ourselves too. It's a two-way street. So we have to love ourselves too, and we have to be kind to ourselves. And so we forgive sometimes to show kindness to others, but sometimes to be kind to ourselves. And when we do that, we can improve and enhance our relationships with our friends and our family members and even God. So let's keep that in mind. We'll continue to work on this forgiveness process. Amen.